Hi, Ryan. So nice to once again, to read your work this week. I wanted to start with your questions. I do think the work succeeds in expressing the dichotomy of desert living, and it's something I think so many of us who live here relate to. So it was a pleasure to read a poem that showed the dichotomy of desert living. Is there anything that can be added or further elaborated to aid reading immersion? So I will say, I think starting the poem with neath rather than beneath is a really was an interesting decision. Um, but I think repeating it at the beginning of the stanza here and also the end of the stanza here, um, and then for the rest of the poem, only having it at the end of the stanzas, right? That repeated line, "neath mountain bordered desert sky," um, was a little bit. I questioned that decision. I was kind of like, well, why is it repeated in the first one and not in the other stanzas? So that was just a question for me. If we were sitting in a classroom together, I would ask it. But since I'm just recording a video for your feedback, I ask it as a way to bring attention to a question that your poem made me ask simply. The other thing that sort of took me out of the poem is, I was taken out of the desert, right? I was taken out of the Sonoran Desert when you use the phrase the Dust Bowl. I know that you use the phrase lowercase, which indicates that you're talking about not the Dust Bowl capital, right? Like the Oklahoma, Texas territory where there was soil erosion and folks had to move in the 30s. But it's such a marked signifier in our history of this country that anytime I hear the Dust Bowl, even if it's lowercase, it brings me to that region of the country. And so I offer that because in the very first stanza you use that phrase, and so I'm immediately taken to from the desert to the Dust Bowl capital back to the desert, and I would suggest maybe just examining that line and seeing if there's a way to shift that. And perhaps your other readers this week won't even notice it, and you can ignore this feedback. Always your choice, but I just wanted to point out to you, yeah, the Dust Bowl immediately brought me there, and took me out of the desert. I think all of your other wonderful representations, the jackrabbits, the roadrunners, the coyotes, and that repetition specifically of desert sky, desert sky, desert sky, works really well. So that would be it. I did get a little giggle out of the line, "a slice of heaven followed by a patch of hell." So anyway, thank you so much for your work this week. I hope that helps, and I look forward to seeing where you go with this ball.